Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon or good morning to you, depending on where you are. Hope you're staying safe during this time. I'm Phoebe, known as Trade Manager at the British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce, or BMCC as we are known. I would like to welcome you to our BMCC webinar, an initiative of the BMCC Higher Education Committee. Today's topic is improving employability skills in the finance and accounting sector. We're very pleased to have with us today a very distinguished panel consisting of the CEO of Talent Corporation Malaysia Berhad, or TalentCorp, Mr. Thomas Mathew. Thomas, thank you for joining us today. We also have
Thank you,
the Provost. We also have the Provost and CEO of the University of Reading, Malaysia, Prof. Wing Lam. Prof. Wing, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone.
And a warm welcome to the CEO of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, or MIA, Dr. Nurmazilah Dato Mahzan. Welcome, Dr. Nurmazilah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Phoebe. Good afternoon, everyone, and Assalamualaikum.
From BP, we're pleased to welcome the Head of Country and Regional Director, GBS Asia, Mr. Luke Joseph. Hello, Luke. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Due to unforeseen circumstances, Prof. Shamsul from the International University of Malaya-Wales is no longer able to join us. As an addition to the panel, we are delighted to welcome the Academic Director, Prof. Dr. Rozainun Haji Abdul Aziz. Welcome, Prof. Ainun. Thank you for joining today.
Yeah, thank you, Phoebe. Hi, everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nice meeting you all.
Moderating our session for today will be the International Client Relations Manager from Kaplan Financial Services, Mr. Calum Shepard. Thank you, Calum, for guiding us through this conversation today.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Or no, good afternoon. I'm in the morning. Thank you, Phoebe.
Once again, a huge thank you to all our panelists and moderator for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Before we start the session, a little bit of housekeeping. Please be forthcoming with your questions during this session and send them in through the Q&A function available at the bottom of your screen instead of in the public chat function. We'll attempt to address your questions if time permits. Please also indicate which speaker your question is for. So without further ado, I would like to invite Calum to start the discussion. Calum, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Phoebe, and thank you to our esteemed panelists. I think this is a really interesting topic for discussion, and we've definitely got the right people to talk about this. It's going to be very exciting. So today's topic is improving employability skills within the finance and accounting sector. And this is a really big topic. But more specifically, we want to look at, the collaboration that exists between institutes, between universities, and employers as well, and what needs to happen to improve these skills. I'm really lucky. I've been spending a lot of time in Malaysia over the last 6 years, albeit not recently. And in this time, there's lots of things have happened which have been really positive for the accounting and finance sector. But there's always room for improvement. There's always new things that need to be looked at. The world of accountants and finance is forever changing. So sessions like this are really, really important for us to understand, what we need to do to move forwards. And really, what does everybody involved in the process, what does everybody else think as well? So we'll start off with our introductions. We'd like everybody from the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and their kind of initial thoughts on this topic. I think, should we start with Dr. Nurmazilah?
Oh, all right.
You're top on my list.
Well, thank you, Calum. It has been really much a pleasure to be here today. And in fact, in the past, we've been collaborating with Calum and BMCC for quite a number of times. And I think this topic is really, really relevant, especially within the backdrop of the current ecosystem and economic scenario. So, well, I think a lot of you may have known Malaysian Institute of Accountants. We are a statutory body. We are established under the purview of the Ministry of Finance. And the main role and mandate to the Malaysian Institute of Accountants is to develop and regulate the accountancy profession. And clearly that is articulated in our Accountants Act 1967. So, but we are actually doing a lot of things in terms of the development aspect, and also we are enhancing in terms of our regulation aspect. But really, you know, one of the things that we're very passionate with is to ensure that the accountancy professional is staying relevant to the business and market demand. So the word relevant is very, very important to the profession, and which carry or connotes a lot of I think impact, in the sense that whenever the ecosystem, whenever the business, the organization, all the sectors have moved towards something new. For example, now we are talking about IR 4.0. We have to make sure that the accountancy professional are keeping abreast and making themselves relevant. So MIE has been, you know, issuing a lot of thought leadership pieces, and we engage with a lot of stakeholders in this area. We engage with employers. We ask them, you know, in terms of their expectation. We engage with universities. We engage with students themselves. You know, the pipeline, the those in schools, as well as those in universities, as well as those currently doing their professional examination. So we do engage with TalentCorp as well. Actually, in fact, you know, we for you know, year on year, we work together. We give our input to TalentCorp in terms of developing the critical occupational list. We engage with the Ministry of Human Resources as well. So along the way, we pick up, you know, a lot of points, and that points also become our talking points when we engage with students in school and those in higher learning education. So probably that's a little bit from you know, background on Malaysian Institute of Accountants.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That was fantastic. I think you've mentioned TalentCorp, so should we move on to Mr. Thomas Mathew?
Thank you, Calum. Thank you, panelists and attendees. It's a real welcome to have a discussion with all of you and to introduce TalentCorp to you. Well, essentially, I think Dr. Nurmazilah has mentioned about TalentCorp and partly about how they collaborate with us. But essentially, TalentCorp is an agency under the Ministry of Human Resources. It was initially under the Prime Minister's Department, but as of 2019, it fell under the Ministry of Human Resources. And it has a specific purpose. The intention was to make Malaysia a market-driven global talent hub. And the purpose was eventually to move Malaysia into a high-income nation. So the purpose was ultimately for the well-being of all Malaysians. And that was the objective that TalentCorp had. And when it was set up 2011, that objective was put into place. And by 2020, the intention was to drive Malaysia to be a high-income nation. We're not there yet, okay, but we will be there. We will be there. I think World Bank has said that by 2028 latest, 2025 earliest, depending on our growth, we will get there. But the more important thing is whether we can actually make it sustainable and the quality of that achievement in terms of being a high-income nation. So part of the building blocks that we have in terms of getting there is essentially on 3 fronts. So that's TalentCorp's purpose. One is to optimize the Malaysian talent. And that's where all of you, a primary bulk of you attendees, I think fall very much into that. The idea of optimizing Malaysian talent is to raise the skill sets of our Malaysian graduates, undergraduates, to raise them to a level that meets what the industry demands. And in getting there, in terms of that building block, we have a number of initiatives. We have initiatives such as a structured internship program that we advocate very strongly. And we feel very strongly, TalentCorp feels very strongly that any intervention must happen during the schooling days or university days. You know, we feel that the upskilling and reskilling post-graduation is something that we can avoid and the idea of intervening early is really much better. And therefore, we pushed the structured internship program to employers. We also have initiatives like the next program, where we have a psychometric assessment tool where we profile individuals. We understand their values, interests, and preference. And based on that, companies can profile the kind of candidates that they want to take in as interns as well. We also do career comeback program for women. We do semester break programs with universities. All of this is part and parcel of the initiatives that we do to try and raise the skill sets of Malaysians. TalentCorp is actually a focal point between the industry, the academia, and the government. And that's a key role that we play. Because we are a government agency, we're actually able to sit down with industries, understand their wants, and then feed that back to the government to make policy changes where required, as well as to academia where they need to write curriculums, for example. And we have many industries that actually work with universities to drop curriculums that suits the kind of talent pipeline that they want. So that's the first building block. The pillar is optimizing Malaysian talent. The second one is facilitating and attracting global talent. Okay, TalentCorp has a program where we try and bring Malaysians back from overseas. We have an incentive to actually provide them an incentive to come back, because we feel that these are skill sets that are required. On one hand, we raise the level of Malaysians within Malaysia, the skill sets. On the other hand, we try and bring back Malaysians from overseas so that we have the best skill sets within the country. So we have incentive programs for that. We also understand that sometimes these are not sufficient. We need foreign expertise. Okay, they bring experts and expertise and skill sets that we don't have here. So TalentCorp has been assigned to actually approve employment passes for expatriates. Okay, we are one of the 9 agencies that do that. So we also provide resident pass talent for expatriates who want to live longer in Malaysia and also provide and contribute to the country. The third thrust that we have, or the third pillar that we have, is actually building a network of top talents, which is something that TalentCorp is working on this year, more focused in a way. We want to do a lot of industry academic collaborations. We've actually brought industries to talk to the minister, to get the minister to understand, or the ministry to understand what's happening on the corporate front, the kind of investments that they do, the kind of job creations that they create, the talent development strategy that they have. And the reason is because we feel ultimately it is the industries that drive job creations, and you need to actually, it's for the government to understand what the industry does. So there's a continuous dialogue that we put into place, and we will have that more frequently. We also carry out engagements with the ministry, for example, on the women front. We push for women to come back into the workforce. Women have left the workforce. And again, this is something that we look very earnestly and intently into. Why? Because brain drain is just not confined to Malaysians leaving Malaysia for work overseas, but also women that leave the workforce. Interestingly, women occupy 65% or 60 to 65% of the undergraduate space. And unfortunately, that doesn't translate into women coming into the workforce. Only 55% of them come into the workforce, while 80% of men come back into the workforce, and they leave to start a family, for example. So again, that's a brain drain internally that we have. So all of these various fronts are fronts that TalentCorp does to actually raise the skill set levels of Malaysians. And well, ultimate objective is to make Malaysia a high-income country, to make Malaysia a global market-driven global talent hub. So that's a bit about TalentCorp. More than happy to engage with you all separately if you all need. I hope that suffices for now. Calum, off to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I think that it's a very good summary of some of the things that you're working on. I'd like to just bring to everyone's attention the critical occupations list is something I've never seen before until recently, and it's a really interesting piece of work. And there's lots of really good things in there, and we'll talk about some of those later. But for those of you attending who haven't seen the critical occupations list before, it's definitely worth looking at. So if we move on now to Prof. Aynan, I think you're next in my screen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Calum. Hi, from IUMW. We are a private university. It's owned by a mutual partnership. It's between University of Malaya, UM, and the University of Wales, UK, in 2012. And we are where we are in the heart of Kuala Lumpur, just by Bank Negara. If that is the landmark that everybody is familiar with. And perhaps we are among the youngest in the country. We are classified as an emerging university. So the university, it has undergone development, growth, and we remain committed to do more for the students to be more capable and with the right attitude when they go out to work. Yes, it's skills, it's both the competencies and also the soft skills. We do have connections with several industries and professional bodies. We have 27 programs from foundation to PhD, ranging from various disciplines in business, Islamic finance, accounting, arts, professional communication, computer science, biotech, and project management, among others. And we have ties with leading accounting professional bodies as well. If there is any interest with collaboration here among panel members, we are more than happy to work with you. Perhaps we can get in touch, and if Phoebe doesn't mind, through her, and perhaps we can work out something. On the side, we do have an open day this Friday till Sunday, so do visit our campus on Jalan Tun Ismail. And on TalentCorp just now, Thomas, that's very interesting, building blocks. I like the initiatives and the intervention that you mentioned just now. And yeah, perhaps we can pursue further on this afterwards. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Professor. We'll go to Luke, Mr. Luke Joseph next.
Thanks, Calum. Good afternoon, everyone. So just a little bit of introduction about BP in Malaysia. We are about 1,100 strong over here, and the vast majority of us are part of what we refer to as the Global Business Services Group. And the Global Business Services Group, or GBS Asia, is primarily looking at supporting activities related to finance, accounting, tax, HR, procurement, etc. So I think it's very timely that we have this conversation, because what we're realizing is that there is quite a significant competition that Malaysia as a country is facing right now, in the GBS space. There are emerging countries like Eastern Europe and so on who are now getting more into finance, accounting sort of roles and jobs, and as such, we are realizing that it's become a bit of a competition, a healthy competition, I would say, and more often than not, I think we have these sort of conversations within amongst our peers as well. But it's the first one I've been in where we've got both representation from the corporate side of it as well as academia. And I think this is really important because, as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And I truly believe that if you want to develop good talent, it doesn't start and end during the schooling years. It continues. It's a constant evolution, even as folks get into the workplace, the marketplace. As an example, BP, we invest a lot in upskilling, reskilling. We have a program called BP University. It's a global program that we have where we offer various training modules, for our staff to upskill and reskill themselves in areas which are, emerging. Example, digital and agile and so on. So I'm really happy to represent the corporate side of it in this conversation. I think a little bit about myself as well. I don't come from a finance background per se, but you know, I've been involved in a lot of interviews, you know, for financial roles, and you know, I think right now it's you know what based on our observations, what's really becoming more and more apparent is the fact that it's a balance between technical skills and the softer skills, right? So I won't elaborate too much right now because I think that's you know that's some of the topics that we're going to be covering a little later. But that's all that I have for right now. Thanks, Calum.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you. Yep, definitely the balance of soft and technical skills will be something that we talk about shortly. Last and by no means least, we have Professor Wing Lam.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Calum, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm glad I can balance the team here with the academic representation. So I'm the Provost and CEO of University of Reading, Malaysia, where the branch campus of the University of Reading in the UK. Our campus is located in a place called EduCity, which is in Iskandar, Johor. There's a picture just behind me of our nice looking campus. So our business school, which is the Henley Business School, has a long history of engaging with professional associations and industry. In the UK, for example, we've partnered with PwC for a number of years on the accounting program. In Malaysia here, our Bachelors of Accounting and Finance program, we run that in partnership with IUMW, which is the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. What's interesting is that that's a 4-year program where in the 3rd year, the students spend 1 full year placement, typically at one of the professional services firms. And I don't think that's typical in Malaysia. Most internships are quite short, 3 months in duration. So I think that's interesting. I think there are lots of benefits to the program that we offer. There's a fast track to chartered accountancy with ICAEW. One of the benefits for the students is they get that and they get the industry exposure. For the companies and employers, they also get to identify potential talent at a very early stage. So I think that's a good example of a collaboration between academia, professional associations, industry, and also firms as well. It works quite well. I'll say more about that later on, but I guess we want to get on with the discussion. So I'll leave it for there now, if that's okay, Calum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think we'll definitely talk about those collaborations later on. So we've introduced our panelists. We can now introduce some of the topics that we're going to be talking about. And I think that the first thing that we need to do is we need to define what we mean by employability skills and some of the skills that we want to talk about. So the first question here is, you know, we've got a wide selection as well. We've got business, we've got universities, and then obviously we've got the institutes and the bodies sit behind this. So this is quite an open question, but you know, to our panelists, what do you view as the key employability skills for the finance and accounting sector today? And I think, can we? I mean, I'm gonna pick people. I'm gonna be one of those. So
perhaps I can volunteer on that. Calum.
Perfect. Thank you.
We know each other very well. Well, this is very interesting because we are talking about accounting and finance, and that's where MIE, as you know, as the statutory body given the mandate to register accountants in Malaysia. So I think on the global context, in certain countries, you don't have the statutory body that handles the profession. But in Malaysia, the Malaysian government has actually established a few professional statutory body like MIE. For example, MIE is taking care of the accountancy profession, the Malaysian Medical Council is taking care of medical profession, and we have the board of engineers that's taking care of the engineering. So everyone needs to be registered, especially if you are going to practice in firms, you're going to be a partner in firms. So we, apart from registration, registering individual members, we also actually give out practicing certificates to those who are interested to be working as a partners in firm. So, and one thing interesting in the accountancy profession, especially, we are part of the global connection. We are part of the International Federation of Accountants, which is a global network and collaboration, and whereby in the accountancy profession itself, we have what we call international education standards, whereby, you know, all professional bodies such as ICW, ACCA, CPA Australia, those who are very familiar in Malaysia, we are all part of this international education standard, and we pledge and we do our best to meet these standards. And really what the International Federation of Accountants has done is that in 2019, 2020, and up to 2021, they had a massive engagement with several, globally, massive engagement globally with many sectors and different type of employers from various sectors to deliberate and identify what are the skill sets, you know, the general skill sets that are expected out of the future professionals and also the current professional which they need to upskill. So Luke has mentioned about upskilling, which is very important. So really there are a few. First is the ability to articulate critical thinking, you know, problem solving, very, very important. Of course, the technical ability, depending on what kind of your core functions. Of course, those are very important, but those skills can also be learned on the job as well. And you may need the baseline before you enter the job. So that impact the employability, of course, because perhaps during the interview, during the assessments, your employer would then ask you or would then assess in terms of your ability to articulate or to present, your general or your understanding on the subject matter. But that is where I think, you know, these skills it also include agility. Yeah, agility in the sense that if things are changing, your ecosystems are changing, you need to be agile to embrace and enhance your skill set. Yeah, so this is where I think if you're a early career potential employee or you're looking for employment, it is very important that they need to be engaged with their ecosystem. You know, need to be engaged with ecosystem is, say if you're in university, it's not just about what's inside the university. And do you read newspaper? Do you know what is going on around you? Being engaged with ecosystem is very, very important. So this is the development in the accountancy profession. In fact, the International Federation of Accountants in 2020 has produced a number of articles, and also in January 2021, they came out with what we call an education summit, in terms of success to transform learning and development. And a lot has been discussed in terms of the skill sets that the early career accountants and the current accountants need to embrace. So this is where MIA, we run a lot of what we call continuing professional education. It is something that is mandatory for all members who are registered. And we run almost about 1,000 in a year in various topics, technical, communication, technology and whatnot. So it's important to understand that in accountancy profession, you know, skills like analytics is one of those that has been identified and earmarked as a very important skills. You know, ability to analyze and articulate the numbers, and you know, and putting it connecting it to the context of your business is also very important. So I think this is where I need to start, because when we talk about accountancy profession, we are part of the Global International Federation of Accountants. We do you know, follow an education standard, and we do agree on the basic baseline skill sets, about 5 of them, that after the global deliberation on the skill sets. So that's where I think I may want to start. I would like to start with that. And I think Luke and all that, you all can add on in terms of the skill sets that's needed. So back to you, Calum. Yeah.
Thank you, Dato. I think that is really important. Yeah, there are sort of global standards in terms of education for accountancy, and obviously there are, you know, lots of sort of global accountancy bodies and different institutes and qualifications, and a lot of the time the skills that are built through these are kind of quite fundamental. Perhaps Luke, if we come to you in terms of from an employer's perspective, the sort of skills that you would like to see in the sector.
Sure, thanks, Calum. And you know, I was, you know, even as Dr. Nurmazilah was going through her list, I was just noticing my list, and I was ticking off all the points which she was mentioning, because it seems to be quite identical. You know, I you know, absolutely agree. Critical thinking, you know, agile, digital fluency. I mean, these are the skills of the future. You know, maybe the point to add is, you know, some of the best CFOs that I've worked with, are actually not from a finance background. And I'll tell you why. It's because, you know, I'm not saying that someone from a finance background can't be a great CFO. Obviously, you know, that is a great advantage. But the skill sets that really sort of accentuated the ability of the CFO was the fact that they had a deep understanding of the business. You know, you really need to understand your industry, your business, and not just be someone who processes things or transactions, right? You need to understand why you're doing it. You need to have an understanding of the implications of it, the outcomes, the business outcomes, etc. Right? And you know, there's some of these CFOs that I dealt with. They actually have degrees in engineering. What does engineering teach? It teaches logical thinking, right? And I'm sure, you know, the finance sector as well, you know, or the academics within the finance area also teaches this as well. You know, how do you approach a problem or a situation in a logical manner, right? So to the point that Dr. Nurmazilah was mentioning, I think critical thinking, you know, these are really very relevant skill sets that we see in finance professionals today, right? I think apart from that, you know, it's all been said by Dr. Nurmazilah. I mean, those are exactly the skill sets that I would call out as well.
Thank you, Luke. I think there's quite a disconnect maybe between the technical skills required and some of the softer skills. And obviously finance and accountancy is a very heavily regulated business sector, and there will always have to be certain technical skills which are met. But I suppose as accountancy has evolved over the last few years, potentially more focus needs to be paid on some of these softer skills, and maybe they need to be embedded more within the programs. Perhaps Professor Aynan or Professor Wing Lam, you could give us some of your thoughts on some of the skills we need to see.
Alexa, Prof. Aziz, go first.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Just back to your question just now, Calum, on the definition of employability skills. And then afterwards, what would be the key employability skills? My experience, there is a mismatch or misunderstanding between the meaning of employability. The academia, graduate employability, is a set of achievement skills, understandings, personal attributes that would make the graduates more likely to gain employment and be successful in their chosen occupations. And that should benefit them, the workforce, the community, and the economy. So they are generally skills that would cut across all the industries vertically, across all jobs, basically, from the entry level right up to chief executive officer. That's the academic side. On the employer's perspective, this I've taken from literature. I won't mention from where, unless you want to know. From the employer's perspective, employability seems to refer to work readiness. So are you ready? I hope we see the fact that we are all in this journey whereby we take students at the university, we take students from where they are, and then we develop them. And we give them the skills that they need to have. Then afterwards, for us, they are ready for work because they are qualified, they finish their program at the university. They get a qualification. So they go out and they join you as in the industry. So at the industry, it is the responsibility then after us that you have to turn them into what you want them in terms of gaining what skills and what would be required for them to do and for what job. So the work readiness here is the possession of the skills, knowledge, attitudes, commercial understanding that should be able for the graduates to make productive contributions to the objectives of the organization. So I see we can take, yeah, I did also just like what Luke did on Dr. Nurmazilah's pointers on the skills. So I have a list, and I also checked from ACCA, from CIMA, even from MIE competency framework. They're all very common. We want commercial awareness, we want communication, there's teamwork, there's negotiation, there's the analytical ability that we want, leadership, organization, perseverance, motivation, and the list will go on. And there's the technical skills, business skills, and the leadership skills. And what I like to, if we can go beyond the people skills. We often say, and we do say, and I tell my students, you must have these skills. You join this activity, you go for this visit to the industry, this is what you get. And this would be the skills that you will be able to develop. But my question is, have they developed those skills? We'll say yes, we'll say no, but perhaps then Luke will come back and tell me, no, they don't have the skills. So what is important, if we can come to a collaboration and understanding that we would transform those students from zero to hero. And therefore the human side of it would mean when we say they need these employability skills, that all of us must come together to build those skills. So there's a long list of skills that we can, come up with. But main important thing is whether we can contribute, whether we can influence, and ensure that they have those skills. So for us, once you pass the exams, for example, that's it, you're ready. But when we talk to the industry, they say, no, they're not ready, they need this. Then we run back, we give these activities. Then we say, yes, they are ready. We give them the co-curriculum. We let them out. We invite, for example, from TalentCorp. Then they come and tell us, this is what you need. This is the difference between industry and academic. But the outcome then is very important. Have I been transformed, for example? We were once upon a time, we left school, then we joined college, we went to the university, and were we good enough on the first day? I doubt that. I was not. I was put on probation, and then afterwards get a lot of scoldings for not being able to deliver. And then the process goes on onto a journey. But what do I get? I get constructive criticisms, telling me how to improve. And that is basically what we need, and we have to internalize. So the human side is very important among the skills that we have. If I can say, we have agreed upon. So that's my take. Human side is very, very important. And the journey should be all of us. It's not the student. More often we say, no, you don't have the capability, you don't have the skills. But it is for us then to influence, to ensure that, they have those skills. So I see a lot of contribution coming from TalentCorp here. If you can make this happen, then we'll have better skilled graduates. That's from me, Calum and panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's some really interesting points there, and there's a follow-up question I want to ask, but I think we'll hear from Professor Wingram first, and we'll come back.
Yeah, just to try and build on that. So that's one of the reasons why our accounting and finance program here is actually a 4-year program, because the students spend 1 full year in industry, and that really is really good exposure because it allows firms to actually develop a structured training plan over a year. It's hard for them if the internship is only 3 months to actually do anything significant, but if you can get a student working for you for a year, give them projects, plan out their work, then I think they will develop some real industry skills, which otherwise they wouldn't have any exposure to. So I think that's very important. Once they spend a year in industry, they will also develop their soft skills as well, because they're interacting with teams, going to client sites. They actually develop what I call workplace skills, because these are what 17, 18, 19-year-olds. They've never had a proper job before, at least in a professional setting. Exposing them, maybe throwing them at the deep end in a big firm, that's going to challenge them. But when they come out of the program, we see that it is a transformational experience there. So that's important. I think the panels already mentioned the key things. What I wanted to add was a comment from Luke. So I think accountants, people tend to see them as number crunchers, right? Whereas in reality, the best accountants are actually business leaders. They're strategic advisors to the CEO. They're people with business and leadership skills. So they do need a wide exposure to that. Most of the business these days is increasingly digital, right? So if you're an accountant and you're asked to audit, say, a Grab or a Google or a Facebook, you have to understand how they conduct digital business, digital transactions. So actually understanding digital business models, data protection, cybersecurity, potential technologies like blockchain. This is all part of the skill set that the modern accounting and finance professional needs. And yes, it can't all be taught in a 3-year undergraduate degree program, but definitely as part of continuous professional development, lifelong learning. These are the things that they need. The one thing which I will just add from the student perspective is that the students should also have realistic expectations as well. When they look for jobs and employment, they've got to have a positive attitude. They've got to be willing to learn, willing to take initiative, problem solve, work with people. They've got to be agile and resilient. And that's what the modern workplace is all about. So graduates who are able to take on the challenge will do much better than those that don't. Thanks, Calum.
Thank you. I think so this it comes on to the kind of my follow-up question that I had really from this, and that is, are we actually asking too much of graduates? Are businesses expecting too much from graduates who are brand new to the industry, brand new to the business? Are we expecting them to come into work and have an immediate impact and to immediately prove their worth? Are we giving them enough time to learn, develop, and actually learn some of these skills before we start expecting them to then contribute to the business?
Yep. Well, Calum, I do engage with a lot of employers because in MIE, in terms of the membership, We have many CFOs. We have about close to 3,000 partners of firms, and we have about close to few thousand of CFOs and leaders in the accountancy profession. They are employers and they carry out recruitment. So, but I do see how recruitment has happened and has evolved throughout the years. But when we talk about how do I, moving away from definition, but what really happened in the real world, where once anyone going or applying for a job, so they need to be able to meet the expectation to get the job. So let's move the conversation into we apply the job and how do we get the job. So if you look at, for example, a lot of multinationals, I'm not sure, Luke, maybe in BP, they also look at, psychometrics. They look at your, your ability in terms of your intelligence, what cognitive ability, that's the word. So they look into cognitive ability. We spoke to, if I'm not mistaken, that was Unilever that we spoke to. I can't remember really which company, but they deploy what we call an online robotic based type of employ type of assessment, recruitment assessment, where they use gamification. So when they use gamification, you whichever you know degree that you have taken, you will play the games, 5 games, and from there they actually assess your cognitive ability, your critical thinking ability to solve problem. And look, rightly said that sometimes you may be degree in biometric or degree in biomedical engineering, but you get the job in human capital, human resource. So this is where I think employers are aware what is fresh graduate. They're aware, but sometimes, and in another conversation that we had, this is a firm, they said that they asked the student, can you explain what is accountancy? And the students couldn't explain what is accountancy. Can you explain what the finance department are doing and what's their role? They can't. So employers do understand, because they were all, like Prof Rozainun said, they were all early career professional. They were all started the career as fresh grad. So but they do understand, but they do look for those qualities. So then the one who managed to get the job will go through all the process of training and all that. Yeah. So I started with Arthur Anderson. Then there's a lot of trainings that I went through in the firm, and and the training and continuous education is ongoing. Even until now, I'm still learning. I'm still learning new skills. I took AI courses and all that. So we have continuous learning. But at the point of helping the anyone to get the job, at the point of helping anyone to get the job, how do we then share the message or help them to survive that selection process? So I think let's move away from definitions and academic literature, but let's look at the practical side. How do we assist someone to survive the assessment process and get the job and start the training? So before you can start to be scolded, you need to get the job. Then you can start to be scolded. Yeah. So, but that's probably something that we need to. It's good to get that point and share that with the the audience.
Definitely, there's some really interesting things there, especially when we look at the TalentCorp critical occupations list for accountants and finance. From the report, there seems to be some kind of, I suppose, struggles or problems with professional firms and industry recruiting accountancy and finance graduates. Perhaps, Thomas, this is a good point for you to come in and maybe give a TalentCorp perspective on some of these problems.
Okay, first let me introduce what critical occupation list is to the attendees. So at least we can start from that. So it's something that we do literally on a yearly basis. This is a World Bank initiative, and we commenced that in 2015. So what we do is we, of course, appoint a consultant for the process, and we do a top-down and a bottom-up approach. Top-down, essentially, we get statistics from the statistical DOSM and institutions like that. But more importantly is we get feedback also from the industry, okay? And what are we getting from them? We're basically finding out from them the much sought after difficult jobs to find in critical sectors, okay? And lo and behold, finance and accounts are really part and parcel. I presume that's what Calum is coming from and saying, you know, surprised, but it is actually a job within the critical occupation list that has surfaced year on year. Now, all the arguments raised in terms of what skill sets are required are essentially what the industry has raised. So we go to 5,000 companies, we ask them, and depending on company to company, we ask them what are the jobs that you find hard to fill, and then they come back and tell us these are the issues that we have. Now, for accounts, I think whatever Dr. Professor Luke, both professors said is exactly what it is. They of course, and one thing I wanted to stress was they actually asked for certification. So merely a degree for them, this is what the industry says, won't suffice. They would like the accountants to get a professional certification. And maybe it's because they want more accounting, more deep dive accounting evaluation and assessment. But everything else is really what it is. But so that's the COL. That's the feedback from the industry that we get with respect to that. Some industries even say that you may have abundance of finance and accountant people in a particular state, but you don't have that nationwide. So I have shortage of that, for example, in a different state, and some of the accountants don't want to actually relocate themselves. Now that's another issue as well. It may sound simple to us, but really, you know, you have a situation where somebody doesn't want to move and you know, would rather look for a job here. So these are the issues that have been raised. Let me see whether anything else. I think whatever you all have raised, the panelists have raised with respect to leadership, communication, analytical skills, you know, communication. But from a personal angle, I mean, I was also in the corporate. I mean, it's not easy. I think like what Professor said, you need to come in, you need to get a job, then you learn the hard way. But to ask the industry to give an opportunity to a graduate, I presume it's up to the industry only because they are here to make money. So they want to make sure that they don't spend time having to actually coach and teach a particular you know, employee. So that's where, like I said, it is very important that internship models take place. And what Professor Winglam says is, you know, you have a 4-year course, 1 year actually stationed in an industry. Why? Because then when a student comes out, they are ready. So again, the COL also raises issue of technical expertise within industries. That means to say the employees that they call in for interviews, for example, they don't have the background understanding. So again, it's good for students to actually read up. I mean, listed accounts, financial statements are available. Read up on it, understand the various industries, understand the different balance sheets and the P&L. You know, and I was just wanting to end with this. I, from the corporate, what do I look for in a finance person? I mean, ultimately, it's not a bookkeeper you're looking for. Just like when you go to a doctor, you have your medical results, you expect the doctor to analyze and tell you what the numbers mean. Similarly, for an accountant and a finance person, you would want him to actually analyze and tell you literally what the state of the health of the company is, and that's useful. So I think progressing towards that stage will be useful to the CEO, to the CHRO, to the team in the company as well. So I presume that's what I have to say with respect to CL and the findings from the industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I think that's really interesting. That leads us quite nicely into the next section, which is looking at the evolution of skills. And I suppose historically accountants have been seen as those number crunchers, as people that need to be, I don't know, really good at maths. And but I suppose, over the last, especially in the last sort of 2-3 years, and even in the last 12 months, where, the current pandemic situation has kind of almost forced people to be more digital. I mean, look at this, we're doing a digital event. Is the accountancy sector, and are the accountancy, degrees, professional qualifications, are they evolving with digital transformation and these skills? Is it evolving at a quick enough pace for the sector? Who would like to? That's a very long-winded question I've just asked, but there is a question in there.
Well, okay. Just because I do have the information, because I spoke to many professional organizations as well, so maybe I can just share that, Calum. So in this conversation about the evolution, and we talk about accountants being relevant, and I spoke earlier about when the ecosystem is changing and the accountants they are expected to change in tandem with the ecosystem. So this is where I think there's a World Economic Forum report, which I discuss a lot in International Federation of Accountants about. They came out with the list about those jobs that are actually depleting or obsolete. But there's another report by the Asian Development Bank 2018 on the future of jobs. But that's really interesting because the Asia Development Bank divided that into 4 categories. The job that is cognitive and mundane, that is repetitive, but there's a job that cognitive and is unique, is a lot of judgment and all that, and is specialized. So job that is repetitive, so in accounting and finance, preparations of financial statement and all that is all can be done by computers, by AI and all that. But in terms of making judgment, being the advisors to the CEOs, I think this is where I'm not sure how fast the AI can keep abreast, but even machine learning, really there would be so many conditions that the machine need to learn in order to come to that ability to make decision. Because for example, if you have an AI and suddenly now with COVID-19 becoming one factor, and you need to train that AI on this new factor. But human evolve, they are agile, they assess the situation. And this is where the CFOs, MIA came out with the CFO competency framework. So in the CFO competency framework that we actually issued out, we were saying that the CFOs are actually is the trusted advisor to the CEOs and to the decision maker. And that is actually very important. So it is about making sense. That's where I talk about being connected. So if we map at a CFO level, you are part of the strategic discussion on how the business moving forward, and you bring your technical analysis. And you don't, all those analysis will be done by computer or by your staff, but you bring that technical analysis and demonstrate that and connect to the decision making. So this is where I think where the accountants are playing their role. So we talk about 3 things: accountants doing things differently, and accountants doing different things. Okay, so that is evolving, and how AI come into picture. It is a tool. How all this IR 4.0, it is a tool to enable the accountants to make that decision, to make that analysis, to connect, to translate, to interpret, and help business decision making. But now accountant's job would probably be much easier because you don't have to do all the calculations. In the past, accountants work very late, but probably not anymore, because those are done by machine, and you get those analysis and interpret and crack your head to make good decision. And making good decision is very, very difficult because you don't have the crystal ball. The risks may change, the scenarios may change, but the technical ability, the cognitive is where will really help. So this is where a lot of educational institution or educational providers has embed all these probably pedagogy that help students even at the education level to be able to have a small scale, a small cake of that decision making process. So that's where they use case studies, some use through gamification, but simply to get them to learn what's the real world we are doing. So I think, and that evolution has happened to quite a number of, providers of accountancy education. I can say that I have spoken to a few, and that has happened. So probably that's the info that I have, and if you like to know more, I have all the papers and I have all the research. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. I think that's very interesting, and I think Luke, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Calum. I think really resonate with what Dr. Nurmazilah was saying. One of the things that we keep reminding our folks who work in the finance areas is that automation and digital is not a threat. I mean, initially, of course, it's viewed as a threat, but actually, it helps you get more efficient, more effective, right? So how do you embrace automation in order to get more effective at what you do, right? And perhaps the only other thing to add to what Doctor had said as well is the Agile methodology, which over here at BP we are really advocating across all the various different functions, right? And Agile essentially is about doing things more effectively, more efficiently. As you know, so if you think about it, in the historical sense, you have a project management setup, right? But what Agile is looking at is breaking that into chunks or phases and addressing each phase, in a more rapid and agile manner, right? And I think that what we realize, is that when we do things in a more agile manner, we also tend to try things. We're a little bit more bold to try new things. And one of the concepts that we encourage our folks is to fail fast. So embrace failure. Sometimes people are very worried about failing, but actually failure actually adds to your experience. It teaches you. And the concept that we advocate is, how do you fail fast and pick yourself up from that and get on with it again, right? So that's what Agile methodology sort of encourages and advocates as well. So just a little add-on to what Dr. Nurmazilah was saying. Yeah.
Calum, could I come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just it's an interesting conversation. I think the technology and the business environment is changing so fast these days. It's impossible to teach everything to students. And in fact, the journey is a lifelong one, right? What's relevant now is not going to be relevant in 5 years' time. Who would have thought Zoom would be such a big company? Maybe 10 years ago, people didn't realize that. So we can't run away from technology. It's going to come anyway. And we can't be afraid of it. We've got to embrace it. Like everyone else, I think, on this panel, technology is a tool. AI is a tool. Artificial intelligence is there to complement human intelligence, and maybe the nature of the job is going to change a bit, but those human communication, leadership skills are always going to be required. And as Luke says, you've got to be agile and flexible, and you can't have a single mindset. I think, though, that the way technology is moving is that we might see disruptive technologies now, which have a bigger impact on the business. So if you think about blockchain technology and distributed ledger technology, I mean, if you follow the media now, people are now talking about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, right? That a year ago, that concept never existed, and yet it's now people are talking about it as something that is relevant. And we've got cryptocurrencies and everything else there. So it's just too much for people to handle. I think the role of a university is to try and prepare students to be as useful as possible to the industry. That's only the first step. Beyond that, there's all the continuous development, learning, etc. that needs to take place. So I think universities, unfortunately, can only do so much. We'll do our best to try and prepare graduates as best as we possible, but it is this continuous learning journey where we don't know what the world is going to be like in 10, 15 years' time.
We are very fast running out of time. And this is something I could talk about and for hours and hours and hours, but we don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Can I just say something, Calum?
Yes, please. Yeah.
On Prof. Wing's point just now, that we are in this journey together. I agree with that, and therefore, university can prepare the students, so much at that point. So we need to come together, and that collaboration must be effective enough to see the outcome, and that we can see what the journey is like, and we support them, like, what we went through. I mean, we are not where we are, from day one. We are here because of the process, the journey, the ups and downs that we went through. So yeah, agree completely with the panel. Thank you, Calum.
Thank you. We've got some really good questions coming in, and we've had some questions coming in throughout. So I want to ask some of those very quickly before we move on to the questions from the audience. And this is you can just say yes or no to this one. I am sort of feeling like maybe we need, in the finance and accounting sector, maybe needs to revise the way that they recruit for jobs. When we recruit for jobs, do we need to stop looking at what people have achieved so far and look at what they could achieve in the future? Would that be a better way to recruit the future potential of somebody rather than their current achievements? Everybody feel free to jump in and say yes, no, or that's a daft idea.
Yeah, I'll say yes to that, because what you've done in the past, it does not mean that you'll be able to do and apply your skills in the new situation. Back again to the human side of it, and the people factor, the adjustment that you have to make in order to blend into the system. So, if you were strong before in your previous organization, perhaps it doesn't mean that you will also be strong in your current organization. That you need to go through, series of training, perhaps the CPD, and also different support, perhaps.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say yes or no?
You an employer.
Maybe a little bit more than just a yes. I mean, I agree, yes. But I think it's not just limited to the finance and accounting sector. I think I noticed this trend in organizations, some large organizations, where in order for you to even get an interview, you need to have a first class honors or a second class upper, just to get a foot in the door for the interview. And what I've realized along my years of working is that sometimes the best talent, there's this element of street smarts that really works in the corporate world, which might not be translated to book smarts. And you might be eliminating some of this talent up front if you go about it in that way, by just saying, oh, I only accept first class honors for interviews, right? So that's perhaps the only thing I'll say. There is such a thing as emotional intelligence, emotional cohesion, apart from intelligence cohesion. IQ and EQ, both are equally important to succeed. That's it.
Yeah, so probably I chip into that because we're short of time. From our observations, and again, based on what we have collated points from the employers that we've spoken to, I think the answer to that would be yes or no. Yes and no. Yeah, yes and no. Because even now, the way they recruit has changed. A lot of, even if we talk about accountancy firms, they don't look at your CGPA. they do run a lot of assessments, because they try to look, as I have shared, some use gamification. So when you use gamification, some sort of psychometric, the cognitive ability is picked up from there. So it is not back to, whether you have the CGPA or things like that. So that's how they actually, most companies are doing that now. There's some level of psychometric assessment, and that also includes, the emotional intelligence, the articulation, your ability to ask questions. Yeah. So like there's one favorite question that employees ask, do you have any question for us? I think that's always been an, favorite question by employers during interview. But that's therefrom they assess what else does this candidate would like to know and how they interact. That's where they assess. So this is the human side that Prof. Rozainun has mentioned. It's already there. Yeah, it's already there. And then they look at potential, mainly from a lot of those that I've spoken to, even in internal process that we have. We look at potential. Are you willing to do something different from what you're doing now? It's still not very different, but it is something that you need to try. But that's potential. But if they are not willing to, they're so fixed. This is where the agile attitude is very important. Your willingness to learn, relearn, and upskill. So, and your ability to relearn and upskill. So this is where I think in gamification, you can build that. So when recruiters use gamification, and I spoke to recruiters as well. So when they use some sort of automated, CV, even, automated assessment of the resume and CVs, they pick up on certain words, whether it is there. So you need to understand, I think we all need to understand that in a much better way. But I know that, those in HR, they have now very much sophisticated way to identify potential. And they are actually looking at it now. So it is happening, Calum.
Brilliant, thank you. That's a very good answer.
Sorry, Calum, can I just?
Oh, sorry,
Calum. Yeah, sorry, just one word for Dr. Nurmazilah. Effectiveness of the human side that you agreed just now. I think back again to outcome. Whether when you test them, whether they are effective. We give them the skills, are they effective or not? So this is where the feedback will come. And the collaboration between industry and academia in this journey. Thank you. Thank you, Calum.
Thank you. So we'll move on to some of the questions that have been asked by the attendees, and this question came in quite early on from Tim Dawkins. So thank you, Tim, for the question. So I'm going to add some context to this. So he's asking about apprenticeship programs in financial services in Malaysia, and this is something. So I will add some context to it. So in the UK, over the last, I'd say probably 7 or 8 years, professional apprenticeship programs have really grown, and they've grown at a really impressive rate. And for a lot of, especially say in the accounting and finance sector, a lot of big companies now, their recruitment is split 50-50, 50% from graduates, and then 50% under this apprenticeship program. And the apprenticeship program was designed to include professional qualifications, so they have the technical skills, but also built into that is some of the soft skills, the employability skills, and the additional kind of skills that the finance sector requires. From my sort of understanding and knowledge of the sector in Malaysia, it's very much focused on graduates. But do we think that potentially a similar sort of scheme or program would be suitable for Malaysia? Do you think there is scope for an apprenticeship type program for the sector?
Calum, could I just maybe start off that? Because Henley Business School in the UK does a lot of that, working with companies, and it's funded through the apprenticeship levy, so it's supported by the government. I think it's an interesting model here in Malaysia to apply at the undergraduate degree level. It may need to be supported by the government. Perhaps with the COL list, there are some positions and knowledge that companies could support organizations with. And as Prof. Aziz has said, that partnership between industry and academia could be explored. There's always a challenge with students because, you know, for some students, they don't have the means to support higher education. They don't have the funding, you know, they don't have the background. And this could be a way where they get funding through the government to support the industry with a particular talent. And it kind of fits as a nice kind of model. Sometimes though, I worry about attrition and how committed our students are to companies. We talked about it with accounting earlier. Our experience is that once students become chartered accountants, then they can actually work anywhere, Singapore and UK and everywhere. And they would have to, as young people, you know, they would like that mobility. So I think the model and scheme is very interesting. I think there are some issues around how do we implement, how do we make sure that it's worth the organization's time and effort, that the talent actually stays and becomes productive, that it fits the needs of Malaysia's skills and these people stay in Malaysia and contribute. So I think it's a very interesting idea, but there are some fine details I think that need to be worked out.
Perhaps Thomas, you can join us. This is a potential funding agency or organization.
Yeah, so I presume in apprenticeship, you mean those graduates who have come out and they take an apprenticeship program with the company. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes. They may come from a university and they can work their way through the professional qualification and gain a degree as well as the professional qualification. Yeah. But also they can enter before the university route as well. So as I say, an SPM and school leaver, they could join there.
Yeah, Thomas, with Henley in the UK, the way it works is that they join the company as employers and they may do 2 days a week at the university as part of their undergraduate degree, but they're actually employers of the company and their salary is funded by a levy which is supported by the government. So that's the model that exists in Henley in the UK, just to share.
Thanks. So what we have in place, we spoke about whether the government could give a grant, and the government has certain grants that's already in place now with respect to, of course, under the Pajana scheme. You know, you can fall back on HRDF and so for some of this, you know, grant that you can receive from the government for new employees. Let me bring to you one program that TalentCorp has put into place. I think we mentioned about internship earlier, what we have proposed to companies, and we had a session with many companies recently, is that we propose to them an SIP plus. The normal program that we have is structured internship program, where if a company pays 500 ringgit just purely for an intern, they get to enjoy a double tax incentive. But we've taken this further because the Ministry of Higher Education has 2 grants. One is KPT PACE and one is KPT CAP. So KPT PACE is where they actually fund employees of companies, fresh graduates, for example, that need certification that is required for the company to actually take them on as a permanent employee. Okay, so what we have proposed to companies is simply this. We said, fine, what we do is that you can take on a final year student, for example, as an intern, say for the last 3 months of his final year. So during that period, what the employer will enjoy is a double tax incentive. Now he then converts into an employee as an apprentice, whatever. And what happens then is that that's where the Ministry of Higher Education funds the company for anything that is required in terms of upskilling that person, okay, to make sure that he's employed with the company. So during this period of internship, the company gets to assess the student. And if they find a student that they feel that they want to take in on as an employee, but they feel there's a gap there and they want to fill up that gap, they can call on the government's funding to actually train that person. And once you've taken them on, they can actually fall back on the grants given by HRDF to subsidize the salary for that new employee. So that is something that we have that we can work with employers on, and we're more than happy to work with universities as well, where you have your students and you want to put them across to employers. We can actually, like I said, match it. And if that fulfills what is required in terms of helping an employer take on an employee. But through the process of identifying, profiling, making sure they're the right person, but there's a gap there, I want to fill that gap up, and then I take them on, So all the way there is some funding granted, and you can speak to us separately on that, not an issue.
Okay, thank you. I think there's been a few mentions now of internships, and we have a question here about graduates being paid for internships. A, do they get paid, and B, how much do they get paid? Perhaps somebody can answer that. Professor Wing Lam, I mean, you mentioned your graduates have a year internship. Are they paid internships?
Yes. They're paid. I don't think I should reveal the amount, but it's a decent it's a decent amount, and they do earn a salary. So I think it's good that they're paid, because they are doing the real work for the company and they're getting the real exposure. It's a commitment also for the company as well. But the good thing is that when we talk about trying to recruit new talent to an organization, that's always a risk, right, for companies, that they hire the wrong hire, or there's not a good fit for the organization. If it's part of the internship, even if it's only a 3-month internship, at least there's an opportunity for the company to assess the suitability of that particular candidate for a full-time position. And I think that's what Thomas is alluding to in the scheme there. Companies are supported there. But yeah, when students do a 1-year internship with us, they are paid by the various professional services firms. It's a decent amount as well. It's not a small, it's a lot higher than the 500 that was mentioned there. So it is a good win-win for the students.
The reason why I mentioned 500 is because it will require the company to pay 500 for them to enjoy the double tax incentive. So there is a minimum that TalentCorp requires a company to pay. Of course, some companies pay a lot more than that, but we would want them to pay a minimum 500 for them to enjoy the double tax incentive. Thanks.
There's a question here by from Gerald Fernandez here. So in the Future of Jobs Report 2020 by WEF, it indicated the top 10 skills for 2025. And these are not only relevant just for finance and accounting sector, but across all the sectors. So Gerald's question here is how are universities preparing graduates to be industry relevant for these skills? Professor Einan, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Calum. What I can see, well, I'm repeating the word. I'm repeating the word, and it's the human side, and this is why when Dr. Nurmazilah mentioned about agility, and that we should be able to that we should be able to go through that journey, and this is where we do have practical training or internship, and we try our best to provide the skills by inviting industry players. We have industry advisory panel where they come and they share with us, and we hear the experiences from the alumni, from the horse's mouth, from the industry players themselves, from the young officers, if you like, young accountants, for example. So they share those experience. But in terms of the skills, that is what like what Dr. Nurmazilah said, we embed, and the pedagogy. And we give case studies, we shock them, we surprise them. But when we go out to work, the graduates, they get the question of what is accountancy? So, and they're not able to answer because they're already advanced, you know, but in terms of the preparation for that relevant skills, it is a journey. And we give what we can by involving the industry people to come on board and share, you know, what is expected. But again, we can only tell them what is expected. You need to have this skill. You need to have the communication skill. You need to have leadership skills. You know, so it's going to be a process throughout the university life that we will try at best through our core curriculum that we be able to develop those skills and for them. Yeah, it's a process.
So, Calum, if I may just give one information to add on. In MIA, we have, we have formed, it's part of the many working groups that we have formed. In 2018, we issued out what we call a technology blueprint for the accountancy profession. And we are implementing the technology blueprint, and we form a committee that oversee and also monitor the implementation, and then that involve those in various sectors, in academia, in public sectors, in private sectors, and also it also involve firms. And there's one working group where it involved academics, and they had deliberation. We had the round table with them, looking at the incorporation of technology in the syllabus, and that was really an interesting discussions and deliberation. So and it is, I think, also about bringing the technological experience to the universities. For example, the questions that I have, if the students learn on say technology, say if they learn on analytics, is it a separate program, or they learn analytics when they looking at financial statements? Yeah, because at work we do everything together, but sometimes when it is it is taught in silos. Okay, first year you learn accounting information system, and final year you learn about IFRS 9. I'm going a bit technical, but we learn about financial modeling. But so how do they connect about using analytics in their financial modeling? So those, I think, are part of the big question. I've been asking this question in many forums, and this where the experiential learning need to be developed, and it has to be integrated, connecting the dots, rather than we teach the subject in silos. So when we tell them, you need to know, you need to have the leadership skills, and how they will ask themselves, how do I get the skills? How do I develop the skills in a classroom? So normally they develop those skills when they are involved in group discussions, when they assign a project. So that's part of the skills that develop, and whether they realize that they are developing the skills in the project. So some who realize may be proactive. Some who may not realize will probably just be part of that team and not participating as much and not taking the best of that assignment. So I think this is something that communication with the students need to come with clarity. We're giving you these assignments because when you do these assignments, you will work in a team, you have a leader, and this is what is going to happen when you go outside and work. You will work in matrix team and departmental teams and things. And so then they know, okay, then I need to be able to embrace this, and I need to build my skill now, because when I work, I will work with engineering, I will work with sales, and they all have different mindset and things like that. So they need to realize, why they're doing that assignment. So I think we can improve that. I think universities are trying their best, but we can improve that further by explaining to them why they're doing such assignments or things like that. So that's probably one information that I can share.
Thank you. I think that's, I mean, we are out of time now. I think that's quite a good place to end. I think that's quite interesting, isn't it, really? I think in the past, we've disguised a lot of these soft skills. We don't tell students that they're required. We just we throw them in because we know that they're there, and we disguise it, and they're kind of there, and they don't really know about it. But actually, if we made it clear to them that these are some of the softer skills that you're required to undertake throughout the program, and make it clear to them that these things are, do need to be developed, and they've been put within the program for a reason, it might actually, help them to work on those skills. That's fantastic. So I think that's a good place for us to end. We've managed to answer quite a lot of questions. There's still some outstanding, so I've made a note of as many of them as I can, and we can try and answer them after the session. But I'd like to thank everyone again for taking part, the panelists, and thank everybody for participating. And yeah, I'll hand back over to Phoebe.
Thank you, Calum, and thank you to everyone. That brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you very much to all our esteemed speakers for your time, for sharing your valuable expertise, and for the very insightful discussion today. Thank you to all the attendees for joining us today and for sending in your questions. Unfortunately, yeah, we have run out of time, so hopefully we'll be able to answer them after the webinar. Thank you also to the BMCC team who have assisted behind the scenes to make this happen. We hope you'll join us again for upcoming events. The topic for our next webinar is the student voice in a time of change. During this event, we'll be launching our e-publication on the student voice. This event is scheduled for the 26th of April. Another upcoming webinar will be in conversation with the CEO of the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, or MDEC as they're more commonly known. This will be on April 27. So please keep a lookout for more information, either from our events page on our website, www.bmcc.org.my, or through our weekly e-newsletter, which we encourage you to sign up for. Once again, thank you for attending. Take care, stay safe and healthy.